In the 1400s, the world began to shift. Europe, recovering from centuries of war and disease, looked outward, hungry for wealth, discovery, and empire. The oceans that once marked the edge of the known world now became bridges to ambition. To the south lay Africa, a land whispered about in Europe as a place of gold, mystery, and immense riches. Portuguese ships were the first to sail along its western coast, not as conquerors, but as explorers, driven by curiosity, trade, and greed. They came searching for gold, but what they found would change the fate of millions. At first it was innocent, trade between equals. African merchants exchanged gold, ivory, and spices for European textiles, mirrors, and tools. Friendship treaties were signed, and both sides saw opportunity. But behind those sails, something darker was coming. The winds of trade were about to carry the cries of nations. It began quietly. The Portuguese established trading forts along the coast, Elmina Castle in present-day Ghana being one of the first. What started as a gold warehouse soon turned into a fortress of captivity. Europe's desire for wealth grew alongside its need for labor. The discovery of the Americas had opened vast lands, sugar plantations, mines, and colonies that demanded endless workers. But the indigenous peoples of the Americas were dying under brutal conditions and foreign diseases. So European powers turned their eyes back to Africa, not for gold this time, but for people. At first, they bought enslaved Africans from local rulers, who captured prisoners of war. But as demand grew, so did the violence. Entire communities were raided, villages were burned, families torn apart. The trade in human lives had begun, quietly, ruthlessly, and with profit as its only god. By the early 1500s, a terrifying system had taken shape: the triangular trade. Europe shipped goods like guns, cloth, and rum to Africa. From Africa, ships carried enslaved men, women, and children to the Americas. And from the Americas, sugar, cotton, and tobacco flowed back to Europe. 3 continents bound together by greed and chains. Each voyage followed the same grim pattern. Africans were captured or sold, packed tightly into ships, and transported across the Atlantic, a journey known as the Middle Passage. It wasn't just trade, it was an industry, planned, calculated, and perfected. Nations competed not for discovery, but for domination. The Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, French, and British all joined in. Europe had found its gold mine, and it was human. Across West and Central Africa, the coasts that once echoed with markets and music grew quiet. Villages emptied overnight. Children disappeared from fields. Families whispered in fear when sails appeared on the horizon. The trade changed African society itself. Weapons from Europe fueled wars between neighboring kingdoms. Old alliances crumbled as rulers struggled to protect their people or profit from the chaos. Some African leaders resisted fiercely, refusing to sell their people no matter the pressure. But others, facing threats or enticed by foreign goods, participated in the trade. Yet the truth remains. It was Europe that built and sustained the system. It was Europe's greed that turned Africa's suffering into global profit. Africa became a hunting ground, not for lions, but for lives. Imagine being taken from your home, bound in chains and forced into the belly of a ship. The air is thick, the darkness endless, the only sound, the waves and the cries of the dying. This was the Middle Passage, the ocean route between Africa and the Americas. Each voyage lasted weeks or even months. Africans were chained together, packed so tightly that they could barely move. Diseases spread like fire. Many died before the ships ever reached land. Some jumped into the sea, preferring death to bondage. To the traders, these were not humans. They were cargo. To the captains, each body was a number on a ledger. To the world, they were invisible. But their names, their songs, their prayers still echo in the wind. Every wave of the Atlantic carries the memory of those who never returned. Back in Europe, the trade brought unimaginable wealth. The ports of Liverpool, Nantes, and Lisbon grew rich. Merchants built mansions and nations built empires. Sugar sweetened European tables, while cotton clothed its people, all harvested by enslaved Africans across the ocean. Colonies flourished, and the idea of racial superiority took root, justifying the trade with lies about civilization and race. What began as trade had become a machine, one that turned human suffering into gold. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, more than 12 million Africans were enslaved and shipped across the Atlantic. Historians estimate that at least 2 million died during the voyages alone. Africa's kingdoms weakened, her population declined, her golden age faded under the weight of iron chains. But even in the darkness, the flame of resistance never died. Across the continent, brave men and women fought back. Leaders like Queen Nzinga of Ndongo, who resisted Portuguese slave traders for decades, refusing to surrender her people. In Senegal, the marabouts led revolts against the trade. In Sierra Leone and Ghana, uprisings flared, proving that Africa did not go quietly into captivity. And across the Atlantic, enslaved Africans carried rebellion in their hearts. In Haiti, Jamaica, and Brazil, they fought, escaped, and formed new communities, proof that the spirit of freedom cannot be chained. The slave trade may have broken bodies, but it never broke the African soul. The transatlantic slave trade did not begin overnight. It began with greed disguised as exploration, with curiosity twisted into conquest. It began when the world forgot that gold and glory are worth nothing without humanity. Africa's story is not one of victimhood, it is one of survival, resilience, and rebirth. Her sons and daughters crossed the ocean in chains but carried their spirit, their music, and their faith across generations. The slave trade may have stolen Africa's people, but it could never steal Africa's soul. Today, as we remember the past, we do not weep, we witness. We honor those who were lost and those who refused to be forgotten. Join us in the next chapter, The Middle Passage, Africa's Darkest Voyage. Subscribe to Journey Through Africa, share this story, and help rewrite the history the world tried to erase. Because when we tell our own story, the truth becomes our freedom.